Hey folks, Mark Lewis here. Welcome to another edition of Warehousing Wednesdays. Always excited when in my various travels and conversations I run into somebody I've worked with before and we have an interesting conversation and I'm willing to share it with you. So I thought this is a good one. I've got Carl Ferreira-Calvet. I'm going to let him try to say that correctly here in a little bit. That is an ex-colleague of mine from PwC when we were part of the Oracle logistics practice over there. And he has now rolled off onto being an independent consulting with the ZIZ, Zone Innovation Consulting. And he is involved in his own WMS implementation right now. And we were just chatting about that. And the whole idea of 80-20 rule and Pareto and don't let perfect get in the way of good enough, right, came up. And I really want to do a whole episode on Pareto because it means a lot to me. And I think there's some deeper truths there. We don't have time for that. But while it was fresh, I wanted to bring Carl on, and he's right in the middle of it, and get his thoughts on this idea of 80-20 and don't let perfect get in the way of good enough when you're looking to implement. So Carl, why don't you introduce yourself and let's see where this conversation goes.
Sure. Hi, Mark, and thanks again for having me. I'm super happy to be here and discuss about this topic, which that is really like interesting to me. So to introduce myself very quickly, I'm basically specializing in warehouse operations and technology now as an independent consultant, and I basically help or aim to help organizations transform their warehouses into like high-performing, tech-driven hubs, right? So they can reduce operational costs and improve, obviously, the customer satisfaction. And I do that with a specific tech focus, which is on Oracle Cloud in particular, where I try to maximize basically the system capabilities. So I think around this idea of Pareto and warehousing, we know it from the obvious one, which is like that pretty much in most warehouses a small subset of SKUs drives the majority of order volume and value. So trying to optimize every single SKU is pretty inefficient. But I think in the context that you brought up for WMS implementation, what I see now is really this mindset of doing like an iterative optimization, right, and implementation rather than like a perfect WMS implementation where you get everything right. So as an example, what I realize is, and if you look at Gartner stats, they say more than 60% of like WMS implementation they experience delay. And most often, obviously, delays are associated to ballooning costs and everything, right? So that can get up pretty expensive pretty fast. So the whole idea, I think, we're trying to implement now, as I'm speaking, is that we're convincing the client that just 20% of the WMS functionality will deliver like about 80% of the operational benefits. So that's where the Pareto comes in, is if you have a good receiving put away process, directed picking, replenishment, cycle counting, like, and good inventory visibility, right, for your serials like LPNs and everything, and then some kind of basic task interleaving for RF directed work, your warehouse is going to run smooth, right? So there's a lot of things like this, so you can have quick wins and you don't have to, put a lot of efforts, and even on the solution architecture, trying to integrate, all the different systems at once. You could also kind of waive this based on the abilities. So I'll probably pause there, but that's kind of what I was thinking about when you mentioned this.
Yeah, you brought up something. I know that I did a session here, the last session, on whether you move to cloud or stay on-prem and modify, et cetera, and it was kind of a counter because I'm obviously a cloud fan. And I know that we won't go into who you're with, what you're implementing or anything like that. Don't want to do that, give away anything, but I know it's a cloud system, and I know that cloud systems are restricted. You can't just willy-nilly make customizations anymore. At what point do you think, because I know we're looking at 80-20, does something become enough that I need to incorporate it? Like, this is big enough that I'm either going to design a workaround or I'm going to have to look to extend. At what point do we, and I know there's not an answer, I just want your opinion. Do you say, yeah, I'm going to move that. That's part of my 20. I need to get that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a combination. So the approach we would typically use with cloud, and it's not fitting every customer, but it's really like start from the system, right? So what are the functionality offered by the system, and try to adopt, right, and even potentially redesign some of your current processes based on the system capabilities. When you do that already, 80%, if not more, of the problems are going to go away. But that requires obviously, high capacity of change resistance, and also ability for the teams to get trained on new processes and adopt, right? So that's I think the first part of it. And then obviously it's depending also on customer specific requirements. So some of them you just cannot go without, right? Sometimes. So it has to be a very, I think, clear conversation and open communication to determine, okay, these are the must have, right? And these are nice to have. And this is where the conversation is tough sometimes, but this is where we really, really gain value. Like I would say the most nice to have we can put on the side, and the easiest the go live will get, because at the end of the day you want to transition your system to cloud, as you were saying, if you're moving to cloud, and get it to work right in cloud environment. Then you can have several in an iterative fashion, waves to implement other stuff. But the first thing is before you run, you want to be able to walk or even crawl right in cloud. So that's kind of the mindset I'm trying to apply.
I think that's exactly right. And folks, I didn't prep him with that question. I was just thinking about it when he was talking. But I think a piece in there that you hit, and I agree with everything you said, by the way, change management and the ability and the willingness of a company and the people within that company to work to the cloud system. Say, this is what it will do. We need to adopt, within reason, we need to adopt the process to make that system work, rather than immediately look to try to customize. So that one I think is, it's just super important, because that allows you to do that 80-20. It's like, okay, I don't need that to do it exactly like that. If I do it this way, I drop it from the 80 to the 20, I get what I want, and I save a lot of money and time and all that fun stuff. And I keep myself on an upgrade path, which is really, really important. We did talk quickly about, and about 2 sessions ago, I mentioned it in our prep here, that I did a session on automation and robotics and things like that, and when you might look into that. My opinion, and I think it was then, is a lot of robotic type automation and material handling automation is trying to get to that 20. And it involves a lot of money and time and risk. And so when do you look in either on this project or in others, when you might look towards automation in the warehouse?
Yeah, I think it's, either upgrading or even thinking about it. It's exactly what you said. Is similarly, Pareto is back with the 20% of tasks in the warehouse would account for 80% of the cost or time or efficiency. So one big one I've always focused on is picking. Literally, on the past 4 projects I've done, either we had discussions or the client implemented as part of the project some kind of a vertical lift module solution, right? So to store hot SKUs or small accessories and things like that. And they multiply by literally 40 the picking efficiency. So I think if you want to think automation, that's probably an area, right? Picking or replenishment, where it's kind of the big, where you can add a lot of value very quick, right?
Yeah, I like that. Actually, you gave me an idea for a future session, because I love material handling equipment. I really do, even though it's probably not always justified. But I'm going to bring in somebody, because you mentioned vertical lift modules, and I agree for some reason, and I can envision some reasons why. Those are very popular right now. I'm seeing them in virtually every, either they have them or they're looking at getting them. So that's interesting. Last topic. Actual software selection, and I do plan on doing one in the very near future on a more deep dive on software selection. But you've been around doing this a little bit. There's a lot of different WMS. You mentioned Gartner. You look at the quadrant. There's a lot of different price points. There's a lot of different efforts. When and if you get a chance to talk to somebody about what piece of software they may be looking at, just at a high level, because we don't have a ton of time, what are your thoughts when you start looking at which WMS you might implement?
I guess we're in the Pareto session, so we can keep the Pareto mindset and cap on, right? So I would say it's same thing. It's like focus on maybe the 20% capabilities that will drive 80% of like the impact, right? So you said it, like, and we know like from Gartner, other systems as well, they always talk about this warehouse levels, like maturity levels, like 1 to 5, right? So if you have a honest, I think, self-evaluation of where you stand, then, as you said, you're not going to go for like an, Oracle, SAP, Manhattan, like all those tier 1, tier 2 systems if you don't need that. And it's like super, cost ineffective. So I think, it starts with a good, like, requirements analysis, like that's not very exciting, but that's the reality, I guess.
No, I that's exactly what I expected. Again, I didn't know what your answer was going to be, and I'm right there with you. This is great. It's good fundamental stuff, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it. You got Zone Innovation Consulting. They can find you, I'm assuming, on LinkedIn and things like that. Folks, I want to recommend him if you're looking for a young, aggressive, pretty darn sharp independent consultant. Reach out to Carl, and he'll help you out. Carl, anything you want to say in closing?
No, thanks again, Mark. It's been a pleasure always, chatting on and off work. So yeah, no, very, very pleased, and hope we can add some value here for the folks listening. So
fantastic. Thank you all out there. Thank you, Carl, and we'll talk to you next week. I'll have a good one.